This is so typical with LinkedIn. It will take some time to show us.
That's fine.
So, yes. Yes, now we are live. Okay. Hi everyone. So as we promised, 5 p.m. Central European Time, we are here with you with Professor Ahmed Banafa from State University of San Jose, and we are going to talk about blockchain in supply chain. And that is a topic that a lot of you have asked for it. And I told you this is a lifetime opportunity. We don't always have a professor in the house, but today or tonight or today morning, today we are lucky to have Ahmed with us. So Ahmed, could you please just introduce yourself quickly first?
Yeah, Professor Ahmed Banafa, and I teach at San Jose State and Stanford Community Studies. My focus is recently on blockchain applications and technology.
Thank you so much, Ahmed, for both joining us on Chain Talk and also on this live discussion. For those of you who are not familiar with Chain Talk or have just recently joined us, we have a new episode of Chain Talk, a talk show on blockchain with around the same topic, blockchain in supply chain, with Ahmed, which was released this morning. You can check out Chain Talk page and watch the episode. I think it's a very informative and very great episode for Chain Talk. And I'm just going to keep track of the messages here. So hi. We have a lot of people joining us from everywhere. Everyone says hi to you too as well, Ahmed. So Ahmed, I'm going to start this live discussion just like how we traditionally start our discussions on Chain Talk. Because a lot of people who join us on the live sessions on LinkedIn are also not very familiar with blockchain technology. So if you could just give us an introduction, what is blockchain for you?
Blockchain is a software that you add it to your stack of the software enterprise, and you use that one very simply so you can have a very solid immutable record of the activities. The simplest definition is blockchain is a combination of the cryptography plus the human logic. And that one will keep the record, keep the information available on multiple nodes or multiple computers. If something happened and lost few of them, you still have copies and the rest of the nodes.
That's a really great definition of it. But what are the challenges in supply chain that typically blockchain then could address?
The number one is the trust and transparency that we are looking at and we are trying to find in the facts of the supply chain. Supply chain is an old, concept. It's not new. Since we start the trade, you're going from one point to the other point to the other point. You want to make sure that is the same product, the same quality, the same quantity is going from one point to the other. So the transparency is a key thing. Blockchain will actually cover the traceability, transparency, and tradability of the products that going through the supply chain. And this is huge because with this, both endpoints will make sure that they are sending and receiving exactly the same product quantity and quality without any kind of loss.
And so, having said that, the visibility, traceability, and trust being really important factors and elements in supply chain, then can we say if the supply chain is really suffering with these issues, then blockchain is the proper application for it? Or how do companies or how do people who work with supply chain, when do they know that blockchain is the right technology for them? What is the pain that they need to feel that they say, okay, so now I probably need blockchain?
Excellent question. This is a business decision more than a technology decision.
Exactly.
because when you talk about blockchain is not cheap, because if you look at the companies in that field, we don't have that many companies. And also the setup of the blockchain as a software and making that one integrated within your own, enterprise or company process takes time and takes skills. And also there is so many things you have to set up before you can say I'm ready, because you have to the information, the points of the information. You have to look at this from perspective is, do I need it? And you look at the cost benefit analysis. If the things can go with a simple database, and you're not losing money on this or losing the product in that case, then just go with the database. But the big companies, they go after that because of the sheer volume and scale of their supply chain process or supply chain network. It's like Walmart is a big example of this. They're using IBM Food Trust because they want to make sure that the products coming from the farm to the fork, and they know exactly the source of that produce or vegetables or fruit. If something happened, they can just go and pinpoint that farm and shut it down instead of shutting down the whole, farms network.
I was going to ask you actually to give us a real example of blockchain in supply chain, which you mentioned Walmart. But on the other hand, there is a challenge with the scalability, which I'm looking also at the same time at the questions and the comments that the people are writing, and Mehrdad Hajizadeh also have written about the scalability. As much as we talk about all the benefits and advantages of blockchain in supply chain, yet we see most of the projects in pilot phase, or we don't see really highly scaled up projects. What is the reason? What are the scalability challenges with blockchain in supply chain, and what would be an option to overcome it?
Excellent. The blockchain itself is still at an early stage. We're catching a wave. This wave of technology is just starting. If you look marketing, you know that there are 4 stages of the product life cycle: the introduction, the growth, the maturity, and the decline. We are at the beginning of the growth. There is a lot of unknowns there. And because of the lack of the skills, and we don't have any kind of a maturity model we can look at it, so we can avoid the problems or the best practices we talk about it in business, it's very difficult for us to scale this one up very quickly, and it's expensive. I mean, if you look at how much time and money you're going to spend doing this, you have to be really in a situation where you really need that product. And that's what I tell, the people who talk to me about blockchain. I give them a simple questionnaire. I told them, this is answer the questions, and based on that, they will tell you whether you need blockchain or not. Blockchain is not for everybody. Blockchain is for certain cases.
Yeah. And there are often this discussion that blockchain probably for it to reach to a scaled up level, it needs to be pushed to all different players, let's say in the supply chain, because supply chain we have multiple players in a chain, and then for it to be used in a really scaled up level, then it needs to be pushed by bigger players to the whole chain. And for example, Walmart probably did the same, or Nestle did the same. They have forced all the players in the supply chain to use their blockchain solution. Is that the right way of doing it, or is this not again centralizing the power which we initially wanted to decentralize by blockchain?
Good question. Here's the answer to this question. It's actually twofold. Number one is we need a champion for the technology. Always, if you have a technology, you need a champion or champions, and that's with somebody with deep pocket. And we talk about Nestle, we're talking about Walmart, we're talking about IBM, or Chase Manhattan. All those companies, they have money, they can spend it, they can experiment, they can have pilot programs, and they can have an R&D on this one, which is fine. The second fold is you have to understand that we have 3 types of blockchain. We have the networks. We have the private, we have the hybrid, and we have the public. What we are talking about now, when we talk about a company like Walmart, this is the private blockchain, which is you decide the number of the nodes, the number of the computers that can be part of that network, and based on that, and based on a certain parameters, the level of security, the scalability, and so on. Or you can go with the public one, which is the Bitcoin or the Ethereum, or you can go something in between, certain activities on the public blockchain and certain in your private. The focus now at this stage of the growth is on the private blockchain, because that gives the company some kind of control, but it is not centralized. It's some kind of, I can have 5,000 nodes. Another example, I was talking to people from Thermo Fisher, the famous company there, and I went and I gave a presentation about it, and then I have some questions about it. How can we set up this one? You decide the number of the people who will join that network, and then you can go to the next level.
Perfect. Probably one major question that a lot of people ask when it comes to blockchain adoption in supply chain is data ownership.
Right.
As we said again, we have multiple players in supply chain. Now, who owns the data? Or is basically the player who is the custodian of the blockchain solution going to have more power on generating, let's say, more data based on AI and not necessarily sharing it with the rest of the nodes? Or are we going to face such challenges? And how are generally the challenges around data ownership looked at?
This is all defined in the SLA, the service level agreement. And this is the same even with your the use of the companies with the cloud computing. Your data is actually in the cloud. Who owns this data? Is it the companies like AWS or Google or Microsoft, or you're the one who's owning? You're doing some kind of, for example, you're doing some kind of analysis, and you're doing some kind of AI on the data. So who owns this result? Who is responsible for that result? All of these things are very important to keep in mind, that the ownership, the governance of the data will be defined by the agreement between the parties. And generally speaking, is the companies. The companies will own something like this. And this is what we're talking about.
Perfect. I'm just going to look at the questions before we move on further. We have Mehdad asking, how could we avoid the malicious actor or wrong information added in the blockchain and cannot be changed? How can we avoid such situation?
Okay. First of all, you have to understand how the blockchain itself works before we talk about this. The information is available on, let's say, 5,000 computers. Now, if for some reason somebody accesses 5 or 6 of them through the mechanism of blockchain, which is used some of the protocols, one of them even called the gossip protocol, the syncing of the data available on this, they will know that there's a changes, or somebody modified this, or somebody accessed this. They can just isolate the node. And this is the beauty of the blockchain, which is you are not under the mercy of that server client architects, where you attack the database, you own it, you take the information. The information is available in multiple and sometimes thousands of nodes. So that's going to isolate that. And this is the whole driving force for the blockchain, which is security. And if you change some, you cannot change the other. Now, the information itself, when somebody take it, we come to the next line, or the second line of defense, which is the information is encrypted. And they use the encryption of the SHA-256, which is a very powerful encryption. So far, nobody could crack that information. And they're using something called Merkle tree encryption, which is an encryption inside encryption inside encryption. So you get the data, you're not going to get anything out of that. That's not going to help you in this case.
Then we have Sadek Karimi asking, I'm eager when blockchain will be available in telco industry, for example, for charging vouchers or payments?
Okay, that's a good question. It depends on the companies and telecom. How far they are really interested about this technology. Keep in mind that every technology will have a resistance because they're unknown. people think about what if, what if, what if. So it's this, and this is why, the blockchain itself is, as a technology, is not new. It's actually exists long time ago. It's just a matter of now we realize that when it's a puzzle, we brought all those pieces of technologies or tools together, we created something called blockchain. And that's and if you look at the building block of the blockchain, you're going to see that that's technologies from the 60s and the 70s. Now it depends on that person or that company, how far they can go in creating, and using the system of the blockchain. It's a business decision. The technology is available. The technology is clear. There are thousands of research that talking about that.
Very interesting question. And generally, I would like you, maybe Ahmed, to explain a little bit the relationship between blockchain and the other emerging technologies like AI or IoT. How are they intertwined, or are they supportive of each other? Are they in conflict with each other? How is it? Are they going to ease the process of adoption of blockchain at all, or how do they affect?
Okay, that's an excellent point of direction for the blockchain. In my research, I look at four technologies. I call them the IBAC: the Internet of Things, blockchain, artificial intelligence, and cybersecurity. They work in tandem. They work in sync. The blockchain will help the Internet of Things for security of the sensors, of the network, of the data. And this is how I started my journey in the blockchain, because I was working on the Internet of Things, and I was asking myself this question: with this massive data, how can we protect all the sensors and all the information we have there? And then you talk about AI. AI will be very helpful. It's working as a match. And I have an article about AI and blockchain. Think about it. When you talk about blockchain, if the blockchain can give you, the information at the steps of the analysis one by one. If somebody is doing analysis using a certain algorithm in AI, and you document all this information, so when we have the result, anybody can go back and check how did we get this result. And people, if they say something wrong, they can go and do the same thing. The AI can help the blockchain in the process of encryption. They're going to make it easy for it to use a better encryption, better use of power, so they are matching each other. The same thing goes with the cybersecurity. The cybersecurity with the blockchain, they go hand in hand. They are the second line of defense. An example is the one that I gave you about it, which is once the bad actors inside the network, once it is, if it's a blockchain, then everything is encrypted according to the standards of the blockchain. They cannot get anything out of it. It's still encrypted for them. It's the second line of defense in cybersecurity.
Thank you so much. I'm going to look at the other comments or questions. Naveen is asking, which is the best tool to implement private blockchain in internet company and finance companies?
Okay, say that question one more time. Which what? I didn't hear
The best tool to implement private blockchain in internet company and finance company. Probably, maybe then you could. He could mention for what use exactly, but still.
Oh, there's no problem.
Yeah.
Private blockchain, if you go and talk with a company like IBM, they use an Hyperledger. So, and that is the tool they are using in this process. So, I mean, building your own blockchain platform is not difficult. Do you know Solidity? Do you know how to program in that part? And that is very important in this case. So what I'm saying is, once you know this, programming language, which is Solidity, it's easy for you to create the platform. Blockchain can be created with any language, just generally speaking. For the finance, there is a project now between JP Morgan Chase and Ethereum, something called Quorum, and that one is to counter Hyperledger that created by IBM. So this shows you that the tools are available. It's how can you translate that one into the applications. My student asked me, what's my next step? I told him, okay, here's a book about Solidity, learn it, similar to Python, and then you're going to find yourself really ready to build your own platform.
So this brings us to the point that a typical question that is generally asked, that we are going to have different blockchain solutions, Walmart and Nestle, and then JP Morgan has its own, IBM has its own, but how are they going to interoper? What is the interoperability challenge? Are they going to be able to work together, or are we going to have like multiple different blockchain solutions, and are we going to be confused later in future with all different sorts of blockchain solutions? This is probably a question that raises in mind.
This is talking about standardization. And this is a very valid question. This is always the question when we talk about standardizations. The standardization is a process where you can bring everybody to the table, and I can use a device with in my system. It doesn't matter who is the vendor. It doesn't matter who is the company built that one. I'm using 5 or 6 devices doing this interview, and each one of them is a different company. So this is when we talk about standardization. You don't worry about the vendor. To answer this question, there are multiple factors here. Number one is the pie, or the market for the blockchain, is huge. No one company want to give that one to the others. So we still at the beginning. Remember, this is a very young technology, so we're still exploring that. So talking about standardization is not going to happen now. It's still down the road. There is so many things have to go there. I mean, why I should follow the standard of IBM? Why IBM will set up everything for it? Why not something like Ethereum that we follow that? So, and this is a challenge that over time we can overcome that one. My recommendation, if I have any say in that one, is organization like IEEE, which is a well-known organization that gave us the Wi-Fi, gave us the Bluetooth standards, and they're working at the Internet of Things, standards. They can dive into that. And I attended a conference about blockchain, standardization, and this is one of the issues that down the road in the future, it's not wrong, it's not unheard of if you end up with 3 or 4 standards. Just look at what we have now with the operating systems. We have Linux, we have Windows, we have Mac. We have multiple operating system, and everybody's happy. Android, we're happy with that. So fewer players is fine. Same thing with the cars. How many cars makers we have now compared to the 50s? We used to have over 60 manufacturers. It just shrunk and then focused in few players. And my vision, or my prediction, we're going to end up with something like this. You're going to have like 3 or 4 of them that dominate in the market.
That's interesting. We have Ken Thompson asking, who are the best companies for infrastructure support?
You're talking about infrastructure for the blockchain? Okay. Well,
for blockchain development, probably.
Okay. It depends on how much money you have.
And what do you want to use the blockchain for?
Exactly. And there's so much. That's why I have that questionnaire, the checklist. I give it to anybody who asks me about it. But to answer the question about this is, if you look at a company like IBM as an example, which is the one that we are using a lot in this interview, is because they're well established in the market. They have certain questions for you to ask you what do you want. We want this and this, and they create that for you. Now, remember that blockchain will follow the same steps as the cloud computing, which is X as a service. We're going to have blockchain as a service. So you're going to have structure as infrastructure as a service. You're going to have a platform as a service. You're going to have a software as a service. The same thing going to happen with the blockchain. If somebody would like to have a solution that it is given to them and they just install it and they're done with it, that is software as a service. If they would like to build their own dApps or at the top of the blockchain, then they can do that, which is the next one, which is the platform. Or if they want to go from scratch and build their own network and nodes and everything, that's going to be the infrastructure as a service. So blockchain is following the same history of cloud computing, and we're going to get there. And all what you need is the attention of big companies. We are hearing from IBM, we are hearing from Microsoft, we're hearing from the big names, and that's good news because they have the money, they have the skills, they have the ability. They can take risk. Small companies can feed into that one and answer some of the problems, the challenges.
Thank you so much. One last question. Ahmed, if you could tell us 2 reasons why a supply chain player would need to adopt blockchain.
Very good. There are actually very specific, reason for this one. Time delays, human error, cost. So those are the three examples of this one. We're talking about time delay is you don't know when, where, and this process, this shipment stuck. But knowledge is power. If you have this knowledge and information about the flow of the product, and it is real and it is trusted and it is transparent, it's easy for you to make a decision. I'm not going to use this middle point next time. We're going to move it somewhere else. Apple is an extreme good example of that. They have complete control in their supply chain. And they know exactly from A to Z what happened to that iPhone you're buying, in the United States when it's shipped from China. So this is an example. That's for the time. The human error, we will know where that error happened, and nobody can change that information. This information will be fed into, the ledger, and it's immutable. And then also the cost that you're going to save. I gave an example in my presentation about 40% of shipments of fish from India to the Philippines lost because there is no way for us to know where is this happening. So if you have sensors, temperature, humidity, and all these things available for us, it's easy for us to say, okay, we have to avoid this.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Ahmed. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. This was a quick, short live session, a follow-up session, basically, on our a new episode of Chain Talk. That is a longer episode that you can actually go and watch. And me and Ahmed, we had really deep discussions about adoption of blockchain in supply chain. And more episodes of Chain Talk in different industries are coming up. So do follow us on Chain Talk. And thank you again. Thanks, Ahmed, and thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.